Hi there, and welcome back to the world of Excel VBA coding. Today we are exploring cell borders. We use borders to make the data easier to read and make your sheets visually pleasing to the user. We will cover the different types of borders you can add to your cells, along with the various styles you can choose. So let's VBA. For this example, I am going to use my employee management database. We see that I have put two columns of information on the dashboard sheet. Currently, it just looks like two lists. I want to add cell borders to help the data stand out and emphasize a few things. Let's start with the different cell border options. Open your VBA editor and insert a new module. We need to add a new sub, and I'm going to call this sub cell borders. For my usual, I always put in comments in my code to mark what is being done with the following code. You do this by adding an apostrophe at the beginning of your text to let Excel know that this is not readable code. We are going to use the cells B12 through B19 on sheet 1 to just play around with the options available. Type with sheet 1 and go ahead and add your end width so you don't forget about it later. Let's look at the options you have for cell borders. We'll start off by typing dot range, and we'll apply this to cell B12, dot borders, and then parentheses. And you'll notice when you do the parentheses, your options open up as to what you want to choose from. We're going to choose XL bottom, edge bottom. Close your parentheses, and then enter dot line style. We have a lot of things that come up, but we just want the line style. Equals, and then we're going to enter an XL line style dot. And when we do that, we get our different line types that we can choose from. We're going to, on this example, we're going to choose XL continuous. Now run this code and see that the solid line is on the bottom of cell B12. As you saw, there are many other combinations you can select to get the border type you want. I've already typed out some of these, and I want to show you what they look like when we debug them. In case you're not familiar with how to debug your code, let me quickly walk you through it. Make sure that your cursor is somewhere inside your code and click the Debug option at the top of menu. Then select Step Into. This starts the debugging. You will use F8 on your keyboard to go line by line through your code to see if it is working as you expected it to. I will hit F8 and we will see our continuous bottom border in B12. Hit F8 again and you will see a dashed border on the right of B13. And we continue to do this to move through all of the code. Perfect. We want to play around with some other border options using the same code, but we need to remove the old borders first. We will write very similar code to do this. Since we want to remove the borders from the entire range, we will type in dot range B12 through B16 because that's where I have borders currently. Dot borders, dot line style, equals XL none. Notice that I did not put XL line style on this one. The code will still run the same, but if you type XL line style, then you have that menu that opens up to help you enter the style if you can't remember your options. If we run this code by hitting the play button, you will see all but one of the borders disappears. I'm not sure why, but you have to write specific code to remove the diagonal borders. We will need to type dot range B16 because that's where that diagonal border is, dot borders, XL diagonal down, which is what we originally did, close your parentheses, dot line style, equals XL none again. Then we're going to run it again, and you will see that all the borders have disappeared. Let's say we want to put a heavy border underneath our column headers on our dashboard sheet. Those are cells B11 and C11. We can also change the weight of the borders. I use this to give extra attention to significant data entries or what is just your regular data. I am going to add a new sub and I'm going to call it border weights and add my coding note to identify what we are doing. Now, with sheet 1 again, we are going to type dot range B11 through C11 dot borders, and it's still going to be Excel edge bottom dot weight. And then we're going to enter equals Excel thick. Click run, and you will see that we have a heavy black border underneath our headers. We could also choose Excel medium, Excel thin, or Excel hairline. Here are examples of each that I have already typed out. Run this and you can see the results of each weight. See, we have a heavy one, medium, thin, and then that's hairline. What if we want to change the color of our border? I think I would like that heavy bottom border on my headers to actually be gray. We have a dot color property that we can use. Let's add a new sub and we will call this border color. And of course, add our note. We are still with sheet 1. We're going to type dot range and it's still B11 through C11 dot borders, and it's still the Excel edge bottom, close your parentheses, dot color. Here you can use the standard VB colors, hex colors, or RGB color codes, which is what I will use for this example. After the equals, just type RGB, and I'm going to put in the color code. Now, if we run this, you will see that black border became a heavy gray border instead. We have looked at the different border line styles, weights, and now colors as individual code. We really want to use a combination of these three though. First, we need to remove all of the borders we just added so we can start fresh. In your last sub, just simply add in the XL none code. Type dot range B11 through C14, because that's as far as we went, dot borders, dot line style, equals XL none. And run that code. And you will see all those borders go away. VBA gets a little peculiar when it comes to applying multiple constraints to borders if you don't want to enter these one line at a time. Let's add a new sub and call it sub multiple borders. And I'll add my note as to what we're doing. We want to apply a continuous heavy gray border to the bottom of cells B11 and C11. For this, you must do a with statement, but you have to include the border location. So we're going to type with sheet 1 dot range B11 through C11 dot borders Excel edge bottom. Add your end with. And now everything that we are about to type in is going to be applied to the borders in this range. So we are going to do a dot line style equals Excel continuous. Then on a new line, we're going to do dot weight equals Excel thick. And then we're going to do our dot color equals RGB on 7, 3, and we're going to now click run to see that this happens. And you see we have a thick continuous gray border along our header cells. We have only been looking at individual borders to this point, but usually we want to put a border around the entire cell, also known as border around. This type of border is treated a bit differently. Let's say we want to put a solid medium weight blue border around the company-wide and total cells, or B12 and C12. We will start by inserting a new sub, and we are going to call it border around. We'll add our notes so we know what we're doing. This code is super duper picky, and I almost always screw it up before I get it right. Honestly, I've never been able to find a good explanation as to why it has to be written just like this, but I just do it. With sheet 1, type your range, which is B12 through C12, dot border around. Then add a space and an underscore. Enter to the next line, and I always like to tab over here just to show that this code goes with what is above it. Now I'll type line style, colon equals, and then your line style, which we're going to put Excel continuous. Then you do a comma, underscore, enter to the next line, and here we're going to do weight, colon equals, and we want to make sure that is XL medium, comma, underscore, enter to the next line and type in color, colon equals, and I'm going to use a VB color here. I'm going to do VB blue. Now, if we run this code, you will see a solid medium weight blue border that goes around both cells. Once you figure out the proper syntax of this code, it is a great code to use. I often find myself wanting to put a border around each individual cell, though. The easiest way is to simply do a border around for each cell. This can be done a couple of ways. Insert a new sub, and we're going to call this all borders. Again, I like to put in my directions as to what I'm doing. If you know your range, then we can set the range to your specific cells. We need two variables to do this. Dim range as range and dim cells as range. With sheet 1, we need to set range equal to dot range, and it's going to be B11 through C19. This is your entire range right here. We are now going to put in a simple for loop for each cells in range. Anytime I do that, I go ahead and go down and put my next cells so I don't forget it because I'm bad about that. Now we're going to type cells dot border around, and then we're going to do a space, underscore, and enter onto our next line. And once again, I like to tab over, and we'll do our line style, colon equals XL continuous. And then we're going to do a comma, underscore, enter down. And here I'm going to put weight, colon equals, and we want to make this XL thin. Now, once we do that, we go ahead and run our code, and you will see that all of those cells have an individual border around each one. You will also see that it overwrote what we had up here, the heavy blue border that we had around this. It also overwrote that. This code is great when you know what your range is, but as you start building bigger and fancier workbooks, you are going to find that your range will often grow or shrink. You can't always be going back into your code just so you can adjust the range. As long as your range starts in the same cell each time, then we can easily account for the changing data set. First, we need to remove the borders we just added. We're going to go back to the code that we just wrote, and we're going to just add in dot range B11 through C19 dot borders dot line style equals XL none, just like what we did earlier. And I'm going to run this, and you will see all of our borders go away. Let's insert a new sub. We're going to call it sub border adjust. And I'll add in my note. This code is going to be very similar to what we just wrote. So we're going to need our dim range as range. And we need to dim cells as range. But we also need one more. We need to dim last row as long. With sheet 1, we need to define our last row. So that's going to be last row equals dot cells rows dot count, and your data is in column B and column C. So because it's in column B, I'm going to put a 2 here for column 2. Dot end Excel up dot row. And up here, you see that we did set our range. Well, we're going to do that again. We're going to say set range equal to. For this one, we're going to say dot range. Now, once again, we know it starts in B11, and we know it goes through column C, but our last row could fluctuate. It could be more or it could be less. So I'm going to go ahead and put a quotation mark and then put and last row. Now our range has been defined as going from B11 to column C, whatever the last row is. So it'll be this whole area here. The rest of the code is pretty much the same. So for each cells in range, and I always go and add that next cell so I don't forget it. And for this, we are going to go ahead and do cells dot border around space underscore enter. Remember, I like to tab over. We'll do line style colon equals XL continuous comma underscore weight colon equals XL thin. And then with that, we can go ahead and run this. You see, it does the same thing that we just did before. Just for fun, I am going to go into my code or into my data set, and I am going to add another row. We're going to add bouncing balls, and we're going to say there's 3 employees. I want to show you how this code will account for new lines. So I go back in here, click inside the code, hit run, and you will see it now adds a border around the line that you just added. That's what makes this code so powerful and because it's so flexible. Whew, that was a lot of borders, but you will find this incredibly useful when making your data visually appealing. Take the time to play around to see what type and style fits your data sets. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel for more Excel VBA tutorials. Leave me a message in the comments section if you have any questions or topic suggestions. Thanks and have a great day.